Daniel Mercer had learned long ago that the world judged a book by its cover, and he had stopped caring and almost. He wore the same faded gray jacket every day, not because he had no other options, but because he had simply forgotten to replace it, somewhere between the midnight coding sessions and his daughter's school runs. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Soul Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. His hands were calloused, his shoes scuffed at the toe, and his hair never quite settled into anything that resembled intention. To most people who passed him on the street, Daniel looked like a man quietly losing a battle he had been fighting for years. What they did not see was the battle he had already won. Daniel was 38 years old, a single father to a 10-year-old girl named Maya, and one of the most quietly brilliant security software architects in the country. 3 years ago, he had been approached by a private cybersecurity firm to build an encryption system that would protect the financial data of millions of users. He had worked on it alone at his kitchen table while Maya slept, eating cold rice and drinking black coffee, rewriting lines of code until his eyes burned and the birds outside his window began to sing. The firm had promised him a generous royalty agreement, and he had signed it without a lawyer because he trusted people, the way good men sometimes foolishly do. Last Tuesday, that agreement had paid out. A check for $10 million arrived in a plain envelope, and Daniel had sat at his kitchen table for a long time just looking at it. Then he had folded it carefully, placed it in his jacket's inner pocket, and decided to walk to Harrington National Bank, 2 blocks from his apartment, to deposit it. He had an account there. He had banked there for 6 years. He chose a Tuesday morning because he thought it would be quiet. He thought it would be simple. He was wrong. The bank was cool and marble-floored, and Daniel walked in with his scuffed shoes and his faded jacket and took a place in the queue. When he reached the counter, he explained to the teller that he needed to make a large deposit and was gently directed toward the manager's office. The manager's name, according to the name plate on her desk, was Patricia Holloway. She was polished and precise. With a gold pen, she tapped rhythmically against her notepad as Daniel explained why he was there. He placed the check on her desk, smoothed it once with his thumb, and watched her face. He saw the exact moment she decided. It was not when she looked at the check. It was when she looked at him. Her expression shifted barely, but enough. A subtle tightening around the eyes, a slight pull at the corner of her mouth, the kind of judgment that people who have practiced it long enough believe is invisible. She picked up the check and studied it with exaggerated suspicion. Then set it down with a small performative sigh. She said she would need to verify its authenticity, which was reasonable. Then she called 2 tellers over, which was less reasonable. Then loudly enough for the entire branch to hear, she announced that the check appeared to be fraudulent and that she had a responsibility to her institution and her clients to act accordingly. People in the bank turned to look. Daniel felt heat rise to his face and kept very still, the way he had learned to keep still in difficult rooms. He said quietly and clearly that the check was legitimate, that he was a client of this bank, and that he would appreciate if this could be handled with some discretion. Patricia Holloway said she was acting within her authority, and then she did something so unnecessary and so cruel that the room went briefly, collectively silent. She tore the check in half. She placed it in the small waste paper bin beside her desk, folded her hands, and told Daniel he was free to leave. He looked at the bin. He looked at her. He said nothing because there was nothing left in him in that moment that words could carry. He picked up the torn pieces, placed them in his jacket pocket, and walked out of the bank into the February morning, where the light was pale and thin, and the street was full of people, who did not notice him at all. He sat on a bench near the corner for a while, watching pigeons. He thought about Maya, about the school trip she had been embarrassed to mention because they both knew he might not be able to afford it. He thought about the kitchen table where he had spent 3 years of nights building something real. Then he stood up because that is what fathers do. He went home. What Daniel did not know was that inside the bank, a man named Robert Ashford had witnessed the entire exchange. Robert Ashford was the regional director of Harrington National, visiting the branch that day for a routine review. He had watched from across the room, and what he had seen had troubled him so deeply that he did not return to his lunch. He sat in the branch manager's office with the door closed and made several phone calls. Within an hour, he had confirmed the check's authenticity directly with the issuing firm. Within 2 hours, he had placed Patricia Olai on immediate suspension pending a formal review. Within 3 hours, his assistant had tracked down Daniel Mercer's contact information through his account records, and Robert Ashford made a personal call. Daniel answered on the second ring. Robert Ashford did not offer corporate language or rehearsed apology. He said simply, "Mr. Mercer, my name is Robert Ashford. I am so sorry for what happened to you today in our branch. It was wrong. I would like to make it right if you will allow me." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said he would come in the next morning when he walked into Harrington National. The following day, in the same gray jacket and the same scuffed shoes, Robert Ashford was waiting at the door. He extended his hand and said, "Sir," just that one word, but it carried everything that the day before had taken away. The check was reissued by the firm within 24 hours. The deposit was processed without incident. Patricia Holloway's review concluded with her termination. Daniel did not celebrate. He went home, made dinner, and told Maya they could afford the school trip. She hugged him around the middle, and he stood in his kitchen, holding that moment, which was worth more than any number written on any check. He sat down at his kitchen table that night, not to work, but just to sit in the quiet of a life that had never looked like much from the outside and had always been enough. If you believe in quiet dignity and the kind of justice that arrives without fanfare, please like, share, and subscribe to Kind Soul Stories, where every story is a reminder that goodness still exists and that it is always worth holding on.